Hello, everyone. Wonderful to have you here. Thank you so much for being here. I'm very moved to see this movie for the second time. I've seen it in 2019, where Dov was touring all over Israel with the movie. And since then, I was waiting for the prophecy from the end of the movie to be accomplished, the prophecy of making the movement. And the movement is here. And we are here because of the movement, most of us, not everyone, but a huge part of us. So this is absolutely marvelous. And yes, we are going to have a conversation right now. I let you, Dov, tell anything you would like to tell us before maybe answering our questions. And thanks again. We are really excited and to have you here with us. And I'm super proud, to be honest, to be able to be the person through whom you are known to these wonderful people here. So thanks again. The floor is yours.
Well, thank you all for all your activities as friends of together, friends of standing together, and people who are interested in the activities of standing together. International solidarity is extremely important for us. Well, I think the most important thing to begin with is, of course, to say a few words about the current horrible situation we are in at the moment in Israel and in Palestine. The 7th of October was a terrible day for all of us. I personally lost many personal friends, political partners, people who stood with me side by side for peace and for justice for the Palestinians who were murdered at the 7th of October. One of them was kidnapped to Gaza, and his body was released to Israel last week for deadly sheets. It was, very, very difficult. In 1 month, I attended more funerals than in my whole life. So it was a very, very terrible day and a very challenging day for all of us, and of course for me personally. And the main challenges were, first of all, to retain the moral compass and to keep the moral values of resisting attacks on civilians, on innocent people, whether they are Israelis or Palestinians, and to understand that killing children, elderly people, women, civilians is terrible, is wrong, is something that cannot solve any problem from any side. So this was the first challenge we had. The second challenge we had is to keep Jewish-Arab partnership within Israel alive. And it was a challenge because it's not so simple. You know that Jews and Arabs perhaps live in the same country, but in two different planets. They do not see the same media. They do not meet the same stories, and they do not feel the same experiences. So there is a divide between Jews and Arabs, even within Israeli society. And to keep in this very complicated and tense situation, the political partnership of Israeli Jews and Arab Palestinians who are Israeli citizens inside Israel to keep this partnership alive and kicking was a challenge, and we met it. And the third important challenge we had on October 7th and since October 7th was to find ways to mobilize wide circles among Israeli population to struggle and to fight for the things we believe in. On October and November 2023, the most important endeavor of standing together was the solidarity, Jewish-Arab solidarity networks that we created all over Israel in order to avoid a situation and to block, actually, the danger of the war that began on October 7th becoming an internal bloodshed inside Israel itself. The danger was very, very big. In our current government, this internal security minister, Ben-Gvir, openly said that this is the thing we should all prepare to some kind I don't know how to exactly translate the terms used, but what he actually meant was that the Arab Palestinians in Israel are an enemy within, and the state and the security organs of the state should be in alert position to fight them as an internal enemy. And you can understand what this policy actually means in such a tense and bitter time like the time we had after October 7th. Now, this endeavor or this political experience of creating the solidarity networks all over the country, networks that actually involved thousands of people, Jews and Arabs, actually succeeded. We succeeded to avoid the deterioration that Ben-Gvir and his allies in the government actually wished to happen, and to keep the, I would say, not very simple, but peaceful situation of possible existence of the Arab Palestinian minority inside Israel. The second stage of our struggle to engage wider public in political struggle was our struggle alongside the families of the hostages, part of the families of the hostages, for return of the hostages that includes an end of the war in Gaza. This struggle continues till now. You know, the situation is very, very far from simple. We had some achievements. Some of the hostages really returned, and there were some ceasefires. Of course, we are happy for each hostage to come back, and for each day that people in Gaza are not actually being killed and the ceasefire is being kept. But it's very far from what we would like to see. We would like to see all of the hostages back, and we would like to see a total end of this terrible war that is happening in Gaza at the moment, and it can, renew every minute. So in a way, what happened till after the 7th of October actually can be part of a new, very different film. And I think in this new, very different film, Standing Together can be very important hero. Standing Together is a movement of people coming from different directions. It is very, very important to realize it. I came from Hadash. Professor Dani Filc, whom you will meet in the next meeting of this series, Professor Dani Filc was one of the leaders of Meretz, but the great majority of people in the leadership of Standing Together are really young people. That this is actually the first political engagement. And as you said in the beginning, Anna, from my point of view, of course, it is a fulfillment of what I wish to. When I left the Knesset, I said that although the Knesset is extremely important, it is not enough. And in order to create a deep change in Israeli society, what we actually need is a wide and deep mass grassroots movement, which Standing Together is actually what we have now. The challenges ahead of us are, of course, very, very big, and we need much stronger, much bigger, and much wider Standing Together than what we have now.
Thank you so much, Dov. Yeah, we are very grateful to have you here, especially after the 7th of October. Because you opened a lot of different subjects and topics, I would like to come back to the term of solidarity networks. In one of the very first scene of the movie, we can see you at the Knesset arguing about the budget of the budget in the commission, and there is a ra'ash, there is a noise, there is a loud noise and arguing, and maybe from abroad we can feel that the politics in Israel at the moment, after the 7th of October, became a big ra'ash, a big loudly noise. And I wanted to ask you, because you have a specific talent, we can see that in the movie, we can see you, Dov, navigating through the communities, through the groups, from the secular to the ultra-Orthodox people, you are navigating everywhere. But my question was how the movement Standing Together can navigate as well through the communities, and especially from the religious angle, because the war after the 7th of October, I think the aspect of the religious movements is central concerning the war. And I was wondering how the movement of Standing Together can also include people from a very different religious background, from secular to religious, from Jewish to Muslim people.
Well, that is a very important question. My point of view, I'm not a religious person myself, but I do respect religious people. And I do not quarrel with religious people about religion. I quarrel with people about politics. There can be religious people, both Jewish and Muslim and Christian, who are for peace, and they are my allies. There can be secular people, both Jewish and Arabs, who are extremists, and they are my opponents. So I think we should not make religion a political point. We should concentrate on the politics and not on the religion of people. even now, you know, I meet a lot of different groups, young people mainly, traveling all over the country. Political discussions in Israel at the moment are not very easy because the political tension is very high and because there are a lot of bitter feelings, a lot of fear and hatred between Israeli Jews and Arab Palestinians. But I think the challenge of politics is not only to keep to your values. That is, of course, very, very important to keep to your values. But the challenge, the real challenge of politics is to try to persuade other people to connect to your point of view. And meeting this challenge, I think, is the whole point of political activity. Speaking about standing together, I think that standing together is making a lot of effort to speak to both religious Muslims and religious Jews. For example, we had a meeting, a very big meeting after the beginning of the war, one of the biggest actually meeting we had at November 2023 in a mosque in Haifa. It was, you know, a very, very big and moving event. And when, for example, part of the protest movement against Netanyahu government tried to create a demonstration in Bnei Brak, which is an ultra-Orthodox Jewish religious city nearby Tel Aviv, against the ultra-Orthodox community. Standing together opposed it and actually came there to say to the people there that they are not our enemies, and we would like to have them with us. Now, all these things are not very simple, of course, but this is a challenge and we clearly see it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for this very clear response. I have several questions from the chat, so I'm just going to try to put them together. Eran wants to know, what are the realistic goals of standing together, you think, for the next few months? So this is a very, very general and very important question. And then this is something that many people would like to know. What are your relations with other parties these days? You do seem to keep you personally and standing together, of course, as a movement. The distance is being kept from Hadash, for example. So we see it, or David from the chat sees it as a strategy that looks a little bit like Gramsci's strategy. So we would like to know more about this, about your relationship with Hadash in the first place. And then, as Martin also asked, we would like to know, what are your relations with other parties, for example, with Democrats, right now, the new party in the Knesset.
Well, three questions that I would try to answer as quickly as I can. Speaking about our goals for the next few months, the most important goal for us at the moment is to achieve what we call a total deal, which means that all the hostages come back and Israel gets out of Gaza with a ceasefire that actually finishes this war. Now, all these things are very much connected. You should understand that without finishing the war, there is no real option of getting all the hostages back to Israel. And without getting all the hostages back to Israel, there is no real chance of ending the war. So everything is very, very much connected. Now, in Israeli society, there is a big majority, you should understand it. It is, of course, a result of a long struggle we had with many, many other allies. It's not only us, but the struggle we conducted alongside with, of course, under the leadership of the families of the hostages for the return of the hostages and the end of the war actually brought all of us to a situation whereby approximately 70% of the Israelis now support ending the war, getting out of Gaza with a return of all the hostages that are actually being kept in Gaza now. This is a very big and clear majority. Now, if Israel was conducted in a democratic way, this great majority was in a way influencing the decision of the government. Unfortunately, we do have in Israel at the moment such an extremist and disconnected government that moves that would like to move in the totally different direction, in the totally opposite direction, and to sacrifice the hostages and to continue an endless war with no real purpose and no real, prospect. So this very important and immediate goal we put before ourselves, and this is the center of our struggle in the recent months in Israeli society. It is a struggle that we conduct every week in demonstrations, in slogans, in billboards all over the country. And in terms of public opinion, we won this struggle, but in terms of real achievements, we do not have it as yet. So it is a very ongoing struggle at the moment. Now, you should understand that if we achieve this struggle, if we achieve this purpose, then there will be implications for this thing, because it can imply, for example, that the current extremist government in Israel will have internal problems, and probably it will fall. And that will be a very, very positive development, because all public opinion polls in Israel say that if new elections were actually being made in Israel at the moment, the current government coalition parties were in minority. So there will be further implications of this achievement if we can achieve them, if we can achieve that. Now, speaking about our relationships with the different political parties, as you know, Standing Together is not a political party. Most people in Standing Together are not members of political parties. Why they chose not to enter political parties, you should ask them. But I think it is a sign of some crisis in the party system in Israel, that young people especially do not find their places in political parties, and they find places in other political platforms like Standing Together that are political movements but not political parties. Standing Together is independent from every political parties. Inside Standing Together, there are people who are, as persons, members of different political parties, whether Hadash, or even the Muslim movement, or the Democrats, or even other parties. We do not ask members of Standing Together to tell us which parties they are members of. It's not our interest, and we respect everyone who would like to join Standing Together if he accepts our values and he is ready to fight for the things we believe in, is most welcome to join.
Okay, wonderful. So no relationship with Hadash even for you right now, even though indeed it seems that the opinions of people like Ayman Odeh are quite close to what Standing Together is saying. So there's this heritage.
Yes, לגמרי. Ayman Odeh, is very personally, is very popular, I think, in Standing Together, within Standing Together, but that does not mean that Standing Together is connected with Hadash.
Yes, thank you, Dov. I just want to continue on this question of politics, movement, but also friends of Standing Together from abroad. And one of the difficulties that we have from abroad is the question that Jeffrey is asking, is the question of the polarization of the two camps, of the two sides. So, for example, at university or in the BDS movement, if you are saying that you want peace and you are part of the Standing Together movement and you want to articulate two narratives from the Jewish, Israeli, or the Arab, Muslim, Palestinian sides, it's very hard to find a compromise and to be accepted in your activism. So I wanted to hear you about this question of the polarized camps, but also the question of standing together as a movement from the Israeli society, but not to address to the Palestinian society. It's one of the arguments that we can hear abroad. Standing together is a movement of the Israeli society, but not part of the Palestinian society. Thank you.
Well, two very important questions. Let's begin with standing together and the nature of standing together. Now, standing together is a political movement that is active inside Israel. We do not accept occupation. That is something very important everyone should understand. We do not accept occupation, and we do not normalize occupation. We do not normalize occupation. There are people who would like us to normalize occupation, but we refuse to normalize occupation. And one of the results of our refusal to normalize occupation is one of the results of this very important fact is that we do not act, that we are not active in the Palestinian territories. We come to the Palestinian territories in acts of solidarity, but we are not organizing people inside the occupied Palestinian territories because this will be a normalization of the occupation. Do you understand me? Therefore, our refusal to normalize the occupation means that we are active only inside Israel per se and not outside Israel in the territories that we regard as occupied by Israel. Inside Israel, Standing Together is a movement of Palestinians and Israeli Jews. Inside Israel, as all of you know, there is a minority of 20% Arab Palestinians. They are Arab Palestinians, but also Israeli citizens. And we we are based on total equality between Arab Palestinians and Israeli Jews in the internal structure and the leadership of standing together. We have two national leaders. One is an Arab Palestinian. The second is an Israeli Jew. And all our structure is based on the partnership, the Jewish-Palestinian partnership. All our publications are systematically in Arabic and Hebrew, and we bring and build a safe place for young Arab Palestinians to be active in Israel in very difficult, undemocratic situation that is happening in Israel at the moment. So in a way, standing together created one of the most important political socialization process possible for young Arab Palestinians in Israel at the moment, in this very difficult and undemocratic situation we have in Israel. One of the most important, I think it was the biggest, actually, political initiative created within the Arab Palestinian population inside Israel was our campaign for solidarity with Gaza, where we mobilized, food and health products and other essential products. We called people to collect them and to bring them, and it was a very, very huge success. Hundreds of trucks were mobilized from all over the Palestinian society within Israel to be carried and moved. It was very, very complicated and difficult endeavor, but we succeeded to do it to Gaza. So saying that standing together is not open for Palestinians is totally detached from the reality. It is one of the most important political movement in the Arab Palestinian society in Israel at the moment.
Thanks so much for this. But
just one other question I should answer. The question of the BDS. Now, this is a very, very important question. The film No Other Land. Have you seen that?
of course.
It's a great movie. Won Oscar, by the way, justfully so. Created by Palestinians and Israelis, and it tells the story of occupation. And if anyone here did not see this movie yet, please, Anna, create an opportunity for all of them to see it. We screen this movie, for example, all over the country in the places of standing together in the next few weeks. So this grateful movie was condemned by BDS because it was created by an Israeli with a Palestinian. Now, this is not only stupid, but it is missing the whole point. The struggle is not against Israelis. The struggle is against occupation. The struggle is against the policy of Israeli government. when BDS said that they would like to boycott the film No Other Land, the extreme right wing in Israel was so happy. You know, they said, now you see, they do not mind if you are against occupation. They do not mind if you are for the Palestinian people. They hate Jews. So if they hate Jews, the whole point is, anti-Semitism. It's not about occupation. It's not about peace. It's about we should fight against the whole world who is anti-Semitic. So in a way, such behavior of some people in the BDS movement actually helps the extreme right wing in Israel. If they would like to help the extreme right wing in Israel, do they believe that helping the extreme right wing in Israel will help the Palestinian in some way? Do they believe that helping the extreme right wing in Israel will weaken the occupation or will shorten the suffering of the Palestinian people? I wonder.
Thanks so much for all that. I just would like to underline a few things you said, because I really think they are precious from conceptual point of view. The notion of political socialization process is really the notion I'm going to use in this context of the empowerment through action that was proposed by Standing Together. So thanks a lot for this. Just a tiny follow-up for concerning the relationship with the parties. We understood what you said, yet, the question is, and this is the question that has been asked in the chat, how Standing Together is going to be able to translate itself into maybe, Knesset members. Like you already have, Standing Together already has two members in the municipal structures, Sally and Itamar, Sally in Haifa and Itamar in Tel Aviv. And maybe the next step should be Knesset. So if it's the case, how to think about it politically, and also how to think about it in the terms of future coalitions, because I'm afraid that there are not so many parties these days in Israel that are against the occupation. So how far are you going to go into the coalition building process, given that probably your partners are not going to be against the occupation?
Let me begin with saying that the Knesset is important. It's not the whole thing, but it is important. And creating a situation whereby there will be members of Knesset who are also members of Standing Together, that is, of course, something very, very good and positive. And there are many ways to achieve this goal. It's not the only way. It's not that the only way is that Standing Together will create a party. There can be a situation whereby people from Standing Together will be candidates in several lists. There can be candidates in Hadash, and there will be candidates in the Democrats, and there will be members of Standing Together. That is another possibility. So there are many possibilities of influencing the Knesset arena or the parliamentary arena, even without running as a party to the elections. In our closest target, as I said, is to have the hostages and to end the war in Gaza, and that can create near elections. We would like elections to come as near as possible, as close as possible. with the election bringing down the ultra-nationalist and quasi-fascist government we have at the moment, that will be a big achievement. With what will happen after the elections, that is an open question. It really relates on the balance of forces between the parties of the oppositions. Some party of the current opposition are extreme right-wing themselves. So bringing down Netanyahu is important, but it's not enough. We should bring down not only Netanyahu, but also Netanyahu politics, and to create a different line of political perspective for Israeli society. But I think it's too early to say at this moment how standing together will actually conduct its strategy in a situation after the elections that we do not know the exact results as yet.
Thank you, Dov. I just want to come back to what you said about the hostages. And I want to maybe underline the question of Martin, because Martin is asking about the dialogue with the Hamas. So let's imagine that we are going back to the beginning of the war. And let's imagine that you are offering another narrative, another solution, if we can say a solution, regarding the dilemma of the hostages and the war, or the dilemma of the hostages and the ceasefire. How would you imagine a dialogue with the Hamas at this moment? This is my first question. And in this idea of a dialogue with the Hamas, what do you think of Marwan Barghouti as a potential future leader of Gaza? Thank you.
Well, if I was the Israeli prime minister at October 7th, on October 8th, I will return all the hostages and stop the war. But that is only the first thing. I do not think that Hamas is a good political partner. I think they are extremists, and I think that their politics, putting aside even all the horrible things that happened on October 7th, speaking about their politics, I think they are extremists, and they are not the partners that Israel should strive to have in the Palestinian side. But Hamas is getting stronger because of Israeli politics, because of Netanyahu politics for many years. He is keeping the Hamas strong. He kept the Hamas strong by putting them, giving them money all the time. He kept the Hamas strong by belittling and weakening the Palestinian Authority and the PLO. And even in this current war, and that is something very important to understand, Hamas is not getting weaker. You know, the people of Hamas all over the war stayed in tunnels under the ground. When the war stopped, they came out, and people in Israel were surprised to see them, you know, in all these events of, you know, releasing the hostages. The people on the ground who were killed by thousands were mostly innocent people. They were not the Hamas fighters. Now, when children and women and elderly people are being killed en masse, what do you think that the political result will be? That people will start to love Israel, that people will become lovers of Jewish people? No, the opposite. When a lot of innocent people are being killed. People are angry. People are full with hatred. And people become more extreme. And therefore, in this way, the war actually strengthened Hamas. In order to weaken Hamas, and I think it's very important to weaken Hamas, we should create a political alternative for the Palestinian people. And the political alternative should be the PLO, the Palestinian leadership, and all the people and forces within Palestinian society who believe in a solution that will have justice for the Palestinians, but also place and security for the Israelis. And there are people like that. You mentioned Marwan Barghouti. Marwan Barghouti is for many years in Israeli prisons. I met him as a Knesset member. I had the opportunity to meet him, and I met him and discussed with him politics many times. And all these times, I was very much impressed by his, on the one hand, patriotism, his very strong Palestinian patriot, but also realism. And he's a supporter of the two-state solution. He fully understood that the only possible future for the Palestinians will be in a two-state solution, where they will have the possibility to create their own independent state alongside Israel and to try to start to rehabilitate these very wounded and suffering people. So I do believe that Marwan Barghouti is one of the possible leaders of the Palestinian people. I do believe that releasing him sooner than later will contribute to a possibility of a strong national leadership among Palestinian people who will support two-state solution.
Thanks for this slight hope that you are giving to us, but I see that someone is having exactly the question I would like to ask you, but I didn't dare. Could you please, says Oren, say more about what would you have done differently on October 8th? This is probably our favorite intellectual game for the last 1 year and a half. What would we do if we could do something?
Well, on October 8th, if I was Israeli Prime Minister, I would immediately tell Hamas, give me back all the hostages. I will release the prisoners you want. I stop the war, and I call immediately for an international peace conference. I will invite the Palestinian leadership. I understand that ignoring the Palestinian problem was a deep mistake, that we need for Israeli future to accept an independent Palestinian state alongside Israel. And I call all the international community to engage with us to create a fast and brave process of moving towards an independent Palestinian state alongside Israel.
Okay, that's simple. And we wish it was the case. It's such a pity that you have not been the prime minister.
I think so too.
What do you think about the initiative of Olmert al-Kidwa and their plan for this two states? I know that normally, officially, standing together is not talking about two-state solution, but maybe since we are just among us.
And if I can continue the question, Dov, because it's one of the questions the young mitnachel, the young settler in the movie, is asking you, okay, you are offering a two-state solution, but what will happen afterwards? Will they continue the war even after the two-state solution?
For me, it's very, very simple. Either there will be two-state solution or there will be no solution. It's very simple. You know, there are two people living in this very wounded land. Each one of them has its need for national self-determination. I know that there are some people around the world who actually passed the national stage, and nationalism is not so deep in the current social existence. Here in the Middle East, we do have a situation whereby nationalism is a very, very strong feature of both Israelis and Palestinians. And we cannot ignore it. We cannot ignore it. We should understand that self-determination is something that people need at this stage of history. And each of the two nations have its own right for self-determination to create its own its own national state. Now, you ask me what will be the future in 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now. Perhaps people will say, like, Germany and France, where people were involved in wars for hundreds of years, and now they are both part of the European Union, and people can travel freely without passport from Germany to France. I think that such a development can easily happen if we can create a situation whereby there is peace between these two states. The two states can create mechanism of confederation, of relationships, economic partnership, and so on. All these mechanisms are totally possible and acceptable, but the basis, I think, is two states. And speaking about Olmert initiative, well, we welcome all kinds of initiatives. And although we are not officially part of these initiatives, I can tell you that members of Standing Together are involved in informal ways in all the initiatives happening at the moment to create different dynamic of relations between Israelis and Palestinians.
Thank you. Just a bit before that, how we can get there, because of course all these initiatives and these two-state solution plans are great, but we are not there yet. And one word in the movie was striking to me. It was the word of akrasha, denial. And at the moment, the Israeli government, led by Netanyahu, Smotrich, Ben Gvir, even though Ben Gvir left, but yeah, is full of denial of the other narrative. And I can't see the bridge from this very denier government to a two-state solution. How do you fill the gap?
You're right. I think that the current government in Israel, Netanyahu, Ben Gvir, and Smotrich, they are not really partners. They are not really partners, and they will not go to create a two-state solution. The way forward is to fight for what we fight at the moment. The current goal is hostage deal. Hostage deal means an end of the war in Gaza. An end of the war in Gaza can signal the end of Netanyahu's government, on the one hand. The end of the war in Gaza is the opening of the day after. The day after is the question of what will be the future of Gaza, who will govern Gaza. Now, if Israel will not govern Gaza, and if the United States will not govern Gaza, then the Palestinians should govern Gaza in one way or another. And if the Palestinians govern Gaza, why cannot they govern the West Bank? So the whole range of questions and the whole range of possibilities actually changes when we will be able to reach the goal of hostage deal and the end of the war in Gaza. That stage will mark the opening of new range of possibilities that at this moment we cannot really see.
Speaking of something that we can see, what about this new Arab plan that has been proposed recently as opposed to the Trump plan? What do you think about it?
I think that the Arab plan is a very good and positive move forward. Actually, the Egyptians created a very detailed plan, including a financial mechanism on how to rebuild Gaza and to create a mechanism of administration there and so on. Of course, the obstacles for this plan is the Israeli and American refusal.
This is exactly what I meant. Yeah, obviously, the Trump's plan is much more popular among the Israeli politicians, as it seems. So
yes, and that brings me back to the question of international solidarity. You know, you are friends of Together from abroad. Some of you in the United States, some of you in Europe, and it's very, very important for me to stress that your activity in your places is extremely important for us because, as you know, Israel cannot do whatever it likes without outside help, without outside ammunition, weaponry, and support. The United States is the main supporter of Israeli government, but even European countries, Germany, Britain, and so on, support the Israeli army and the Israeli government in a different manner, but still support it. So your activity as friends of Together in all these countries is extremely important in creating a situation whereby those governments will not stand alongside the extremist, nationalist, and dangerous politics of Israeli government.
So this is a wonderful opportunity for us to ask you the last question, because I see that we have been talking for more than an hour now. Please tell us, what else can we do? What are the things that you think we could do from here that would be directly helpful? We are not going to make a revolution from here. This is something that we let you do. I just saw at the end of the movie the portrait of another Polish lady. I was born in Poland myself, Róża Luxemburg, that you took with yourself back home. So what kind of support can we bring to you?
Well, I think that this is a very, very important last question for our meeting. I think there is a lot you can do. First of all, getting back to the point that Eliaou made before, I think that one of the problems we have in the international community is the wrong divide, the wrong political divide that is happening at the moment that is hampering actually the struggle for an Israeli-Palestinian peace. Because people are in a way poised to choose. If you are for the Palestinians, you should be against the Israelis. But if you are for Jews or for the Israelis, you should support the war that is actually killing thousands of Palestinians with no avail. Now, this is something totally dangerous. It doesn't help the political struggle, and it creates a situation where it is very, very easy to isolate the struggle against the current policies of Israeli government and to create a situation whereby the United States, Britain, and Germany, and so on, can say, well, we are against Hamas, we are for Israel right exists, so we support the Israeli government. So the very correct position of standing together is essential for helping us and helping the world get out of this horrible situation that we are at the moment in Israel and Palestine. This zero-sum idea, yes. This zero-sum idea that either you are for the Palestinian, and so you are for the elimination of Israel, or you are for Israel, and therefore you are for the elimination of the Palestinians. That is a horrible idea, and that is something that will create only, disaster for the Middle East and for the whole world. Now, this very, very important political point, I think it's the most important contribution you make by insisting on this very moral and very wise political position. Secondly, you can stress public opinion in your countries, political parties, representatives, that being someone who supports the future of Israel should mean opposing the policies of Israeli government. Being someone who strives for the rights of the Palestinian people means that you should fight for an Israeli-Palestinian peace, which is the only realistic way of getting some future for the Palestinian people. And each political activity you make, even in writings for papers, writing for political representatives, convening meetings among a Jewish community, among people who are interested in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and so on. Every step you do in this struggle is extremely important and extremely helpful, and you should not regard yourself as someone who are outside of the game, just the supporters of the football game that are just clapping for the players. No, you, in the current situation of the war in the world, actually, also you are players in this very complicated arena, whereby international powers and European countries, the United States, they are active here. They have influence, and therefore you have also influence on whatever is happening here.
Thank you so much for this very inspiring response. And this is exactly what we were waiting for. So thanks so much. I'm sorry I'm not going to be able to answer many more questions. I hope that it's not our last meeting. Dani Filc is going to be able also to address some of the worries that are shared here in the chat. Dov, it was wonderful.
Thank you all. Thank you all, and I wish you will be in the next two sessions. I think that they will be more interesting with Dani Filc and with Alonli and Rula, who are the leaders of Standing Together. And I wish all of us that we'll have good news and good prospects for Israel, Palestine, and the whole world. And let's stand together for a long time.
Thank you so much. You are an inspiration for all of us. Thanks, and hopefully see you soon.